there is some technical problem with the
It happens generally with
students who want to
online
introduce, and there are some problem in entering that.
Online lectures and online classes. This is a very usual thing.
There seems to be some restriction on the number. 100 seems to be we have reached that. There is some problem with new persons to enter, it seems. She is trying, some people are trying, but they cannot enter. Raimol teacher.
Sorry, it's a free. You are using, so there will be a restriction of 100. If it's a paid one, then 250 can participate. If it's a free, I think there's a restriction of 100. So we want to. That's why I asked you if you are recording it or not.
It's the paid one, Google Suite. We are doing.
No, it must be 250.
Okay.
250.
Okay.
It must be 200.
കുട്ടികളോട് ഇതെടുത്തിട്ട് ഫോൺ അടിച്ചിട്ട് കയറാൻ പറ്റുമോ പറഞ്ഞു. ഏത് അക്കൗണ്ടിൽ നിന്നാണ് കയറുന്നതെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചു. അവർ വരുമ്പോൾ മാത്രം വിളിച്ചിട്ട് അതിനിപ്പോൾ ആഡ് കൊടുക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ 100 വന്ന് നിൽക്കുക. 100 കൂടുതൽ പോകുന്നില്ല. 250 വരണ്ട സാറേ ഈ അക്കൗണ്ടിൽ. നമ്മൾ പുറത്താക്കി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പിന്നെ പിള്ളേർക്ക് വീണ്ടും കയറാനും പറ്റില്ല. ഈ ശ്രീലക്ഷ്മി എത്ര പ്രാവശ്യം വീട്ടാക്കുന്നത്. സാർ ആഡ് കുട്ടികൾക്ക് ആഡ് കൊടുക്കണ്ട. കാരണം എന്താന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ 100 കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ആളെ കയറാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. സാന്ദ്രയ്ക്കൊന്നും കയറാൻ പറ്റാതെ ഇങ്ങനെ ഇരിക്കുക. അയ്യോ പിന്നെന്തു പറ്റി? കയറാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ലല്ലോ. റിമൂവ് ചെയ്ത് അവർക്ക് പിന്നെ വീണ്ടും കയറാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. റിമൂവ് ചെയ്ത് ആർക്കും കയറാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. പിന്നെ തിരിച്ച് നമ്മൾ റിമൂവ് ചെയ്ത അതെ അത് ലെഫ്റ്റ് ആവുന്ന ഗ്യാപ്പിൽ കയറിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. സാന്ദ്ര കാണുകയാണെങ്കിൽ സാറൊന്നും എൻ്റർ ചെയ്യും. ഞാൻ ബാക്കി ഉള്ളൊന്നും ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നില്ല. സാറൊന്ന് പറയുമോ? അല്ല സാറൊന്ന് വെൽക്കം പറയുമല്ലോ ചെയ്യാവോ? സാറ് പ്രമോദ് സാറിന് അന്നൊന്ന് വിളിച്ചു പറ.
Pramod sir. Pramod sir. Hello, Pramod sir. Pramod sir. Pramod sir. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
സാറേ സാന്ദ്ര ഏബിൾ അല്ല ഇത് പിന്നെ എൻ്റർ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്. അതുകൊണ്ട് സാർ ഒന്ന് വെൽക്കം പറയൂ, എന്നിട്ട് കണ്ണൻ സാറ് പ്രൊസീഡ് ചെയ്യട്ടെ.
Okay.
അതർവൈസ് പ്രോഗ്രാം വിൽ. ഓക്കെ സാർ.
കണ്ണൻ, നമുക്ക് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാം. കണ്ണൻ, ഹലോ കണ്ണൻ. Hello, Kannan. Okay, let us start our today's program. Once. Kannan, ഞാൻ വെൽക്കം പറയാം.
ఆయన అందరికి ఫుడ్ పెడుతున్నారు రోజుకి ఆఫీస్ వాళ్ళకి.
അപ്പൊ എന്തിനാ എക്സിറ്റ് ചെയ്തേ?
అంటే వాళ్ళు తెచ్చుకుంటున్నారు కూరలు మధ్య ప్రిన్సిపల్ మేడము అదే ఫుడ్ ఎక్కువ తినేస్తున్నారు ఏదో మెసేజ్ ఏదో
నిన్న మొన్న సాటర్డే ప్రిన్సిపల్ మేడం పన్నీర్ కర్రీ అండ్ బెండకాయ కర్రీ తెచ్చారు. ఇవాంటి పిండి అని అన్నీ వేసేసారు. పన్నీర్ తెచ్చింది నాకు చెప్పలేదు. తర్వాత అలాగే ఎవరు పన్నీర్ వేసుకో బాగుంటుంది నాకు తెచ్చాను. అప్పుడు గట్టిగా పన్నీర్ దాచేసి మొత్తం గంటకి నాకు వచ్చిందండి. ఎందుకు వచ్చిందో తెలియదండి. అలాగా బయటకు వచ్చింది.
సత్యనారాయణ సార్.
అందరు నవ్వేసి తెచ్చి
సత్యనారాయణ సార్. ప్లీజ్ మ్యూట్ యువర్ ఆడియో, సత్యనారాయణ సార్.
అలాగే ఏది అర్థం అవుతుందండి.
Okay, we will start the session. There are some technical issues. The person who was supposed to introduce could not enter because of the limitation of numbers. And now there is an additional issue that the person actually chairing the session exited for contacting the student. He could not re-enter. So he's also trying. So there is a virtual community actually wanted to enter the stadium outside, pushing and crowding up outside. We are trying to resolve. I contacted the person who actually handling the website in the college administration, and he will resolve it in few minutes time. Until then, we will just start. Actually, Kannan also joined. Kannan joined now from the college office room. Okay, fine. So we will start the session. Actually, we were planning to have a discussion over contemporary international politics. A theme which we want to discuss was on American elections and its impact on the global politics. There are various dimensions to it, in the sense that US elections as a political process or electoral process happening in a superpower context. And since the transformation happening from a bipolar to unipolar world, and there are various discussions regarding whether it is a declining power or not, and what are the means or ways and means in which that country is trying to reassert itself in the global politics. And a domestic politics, whether it influences the foreign policy. When we talk about international relations, there are various dimensions which we try to talk about. Critical theory generally talks about we need to incorporate all these dimensions, the domestic, the nation state, and the world systemic level, aspects into the global political discussions. So in that very inclusive and broader theoretical framework, we try to look into the political processes happening within a country, which can actually determine or influence the global politics or determine the global world order in a maybe in a diminishing way, but still it's still have a major influence over the global politics. And talking about today's topic in the sense that the South Asia and US elections, Asia as a region which is being rising. Asia's rise is in the discussion for last decade or maybe 2 decades or so. And global international relations seems to be redefined by the term called Asia's rise. This is something which is being looked with various prospects or from a positive dimension, but also on the other side, the world order or the powers which determine the world order seems to be injecting certain skepticism towards the Asian rise. So the threat perception regarding Asia's rise is also becoming a dominant discussion or paradigm in the recent context. So we are in these larger transformation and global politics. We try to look into the topic of American elections and its implication for South Asia. And I welcome Professor Kannan. He will be chairing the session. And I also welcoming our resource person, Professor Mathew Joseph. He was an expert in international relations. He actually completed his PG program from Mahatma Gandhi University, then moved on to complete his MPhil and PhD program at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Then later on, he as a teacher professor at Jammu University for a few years, and then moved to Jamia Millia Islamia, one of the topmost institution in South Asia. And now the recent discussion is that Jamia is one of the 100 institutions or 500 global 500 institutions. Some list has came out very recently, where the only university from India is Jamia Millia Islamia, and Jamia is also completing its 100th year, I think, or 75th year. I'm not sure exactly the anyway. 100th year. Jamia is completing its 100th year in its academic pursuit, and produce enormous scholars, those who are socially committed, politically committed, and genuinely pursuing research in a various fields. And Mathew Joseph is one of the eminent scholars which actually specializes on South Asia. And we do have great pleasure in inviting him. And we do also have, it's a rare opportunity for our students and our academic community to hear some of the thoughts or insights which could be shared by Mathew Joseph. I'm very familiar and I'm a person which actually continuously follows his academic pursuit. And I, as a person sitting in Kerala in a regional university, and that's a affiliated college, I look upon him as some of the inspiring people in the academia. And I welcome Mathew Joseph for this talk. And I now hand over this to Kannan. Professor Kannan will be chairing the session. Professor Kannan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm audible, sir?
Yes.
A little more volume. You can increase the volume.
Okay, thank you. As we all know, PG and Research Department of Political Science, Sri Kerala Varma College, has been conducting webinar series in various issues of contemporary relevance. The topic of today's webinar, US Presidential Election 2020, Implications for South Asia, is a good example for that. As we all know, tomorrow on November 3rd, American people are going to elect their 46th president. In the United States, they conduct election on Tuesday next after the first Monday of November in every 4 years. The two major political party candidates are the Republican candidate Donald Trump, who advocates extreme nationalism, and Joe Biden, the Democratic Party leader, who supports socialist policy. A lot of debates and discussions and also opinion surveys have been conducting and also conducted globally to decide who is going to win. Many factors, there are many, we know many factors are affecting American presidential election. Moreover, racism is an important factor in US, and the social setup of USA is also significant in this particular election. Being the strongest military economic power, the change in American administration is very important in global level. The prospective change or continuation in US administrative setup is very crucial for many Asian countries, including India. Today, we have got a very eminent personality, resource person, Dr. Mathew Joseph C., Professor, Academy of International Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia.New Delhi, will be presenting his views on US presidential election and the consequent political circumstances and how far it will affect, it will influence South Asia. It's my pleasure to invite such a scholarly person in international relations and politics to this national webinar. I invite you, sir, to this webinar. Sir, please, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kannan and Professor Pramod. I'm extremely thankful to Pramod for inviting me to this kind of a lecture, online lecture on US presidential election and its implication on South Asia. I have been earlier also spoken on the platform of Kerala College, Thrissur, but that time there was no pandemic, so it was an offline lecture. So I think one or two occasions I have spoken there. Now this is an occasion for me to again online, through online medium, I'm compelled to address all of you because of the pandemic at the moment. Before entering into the main points of my discussion or my lecture, I would like to make a personal note about South Asia, because it is a major problem for many, that how to define South Asia, because area studies is basically an American or Anglo-American kind of knowledge industry. So area studies and areas are defined according to their conveniences. Over a period of time, if you see the region which we are living is sometimes defined as Southern Asia. Sometimes it is called South Asia. When I was a student at Jawaharlal Nehru University in 1990s, that time I was a student in South Asian Studies department there. Those days, South Asia contained only 7 countries. 7 countries means India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Because those days, SAARC only included 7 countries. That's why South Asia is defined as a region only consists of 7 countries. After that, when Afghanistan was included in SAARC, the number of countries in South Asia increased from 7 to 8. In late 90s or early 2000, Sindarpal Singh, an important academic working in area studies, in the sphere of area studies, has written a wonderful paper on titled as Framing South Asia. In that paper, he clearly pointed out that the present definition of South Asia is not adequate. He said that South Asia must include, apart from Afghanistan, Burma also, because Burma was part of British Empire till 1930s. So what is the reason why we are keeping Burma outside, Myanmar outside, is again an important ideological and political question to be raised with regard to area studies. So for my lecture, I would prefer to go by what Sindarpal Singh has pointed out in his wonderful paper titled Framing South Asia, that South Asia include basically countries in and around India. So you have Himalayan countries, Nepal and Bhutan. You have Bangladesh and Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka and Maldives, and you have to include Myanmar also. Then only South Asia will be having a sort of, a wholesome appearance. Otherwise, it would look like an area which is incomplete. So, from that point of view, I start South Asia, which include as a region in which eight countries are there, which includes Myanmar also. We are not very far from the election result of the 2020 US presidential election. If you have gone through some of the newspaper reports today, some people are saying that the swing states are actually, some of the surveys are saying that the swing states are actually right now in favor of Joe Biden. So there is, many people expect that there is a Democratic Party victory in the coming days. So we leave the election results apart. For us, scholars on international relations and the area studies, the election result in American elections, how it is going to affect the politics of that country and its foreign policy towards this particular region is very important. American foreign policy, to my mind, is one of the most consistent enterprise. Many people think that America takes, very, very different positions at very different, unusual times. But if you look at the history of American foreign policy, it's almost very consistent because they are very, very focused on their, understanding about, how world order changes, world order takes shapes, and world order emerges. That is how they look at their policy towards the rest of the world. So with that in mind, to my mind, both Trump as well as, Biden, they may have, their political styles are a little different, as Kannan has pointed out. Republican Party is a rightist political party, and the Democratic Party is considered to be a leftist party in the context of the United States. So despite all that, their foreign policy, outlook is not very, very, very different. So it is almost, there are many, many sorts of bipartisan consensus on many issues in the international arena. For both these parties, they agree upon very, very important, things, important developments which are affecting their country. So for them, both of these political parties, national interest is very, very important. So from that point of view, who is winning the election is not going to make much of a difference in terms of American policy towards South Asia. That is my first point to make. There is a perception that the power of the US is declining. Even though it is true, still the US is able to determine the contours of world politics, economics, and security to a great extent. Due to this, the political developments in the US, election is, of course, an important aspect of that, are keenly observed by other countries, which include her friends and foes alike. Like any other geopolitical region in the world, the 2020 election will have a profound impact on South Asia, especially on India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. That does not mean that other smaller countries in this region are not going to be affected by the outcome of the election. There is a tendency to, whoever looks at South Asia, they think that no, there are three countries which are important, in South Asia. One is India and Pakistan, because the major rivals within South Asia and the biggest countries in South Asia in terms of their power potential, and definitely Afghanistan because of the long-standing, civil war which is happening there. So Afghanistan is very, very important. Afghanistan is one country which is connecting South Asia with the rest of, the neighborhood areas also, like Central Asia or West Asia in that sense. For the last 20 years, the US policy towards South Asia is largely determined by the larger US-China equation. Hence, one can clearly say that whatever be the outcome of the election, some sort of continuity in terms of policies are certainly maintained. There is a bipartisan consensus with regard to US relations with China. Whether it is Democratic Party's a soft position or Republican Party's very hard position, there is a bipartisan consensus that the primary enemy of US is China at the moment. So the approaches may be a little different, but their position with regard to the enemy in the international arena is the same. China's growing economic and military might and her assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region compelled successive US administrations to pay more attention to it and recalibrate the US strategy towards the new geopolitical realities. China's new relations with Iran and the already developing bonhomie between Russia and China are also going to be major factors which are going to affect the US policy towards South Asia. You must have noticed in some of the recent, news reports, Russia is taking keen interest in the developments in South Asia, because the traditional Russian relationship with South Asia has gone a serious change, undergone a serious change, in the sense that the traditional friendship between India and Russia has completely obliterated at the moment. Now, Russia is considered to be a good friend of Pakistan, and Russia is willing to supply military equipments, defense equipments to Pakistan, and they are even conducted a joint military exercise also. There are those exercises are going to be again continued. That is the kind of reports which are coming up. And there is a sort of a bonhomie developing between Russia and China, because Russia also see that United States is a major threat to it. So definitely a bonhomie is developing between Russia and China, and on the one hand, and Russia and Pakistan on the other. So the situation is changing in South Asia from that point of view. For any US president, next US president, this situation is going to be an important challenge. According to one observer, the three important concerns of US foreign policy towards South Asia are the following. One, America's long war in Afghanistan. Second, America's complex relations with Pakistan. And third, the emerging close strategic partnership developing between US and India. The US decided to withdraw from Afghanistan during the presidency of Barack Obama. By this, the US has technically accepted the dominant position of Taliban in Afghanistan in the period of power transition and future power architecture in Afghanistan. As you know, United States involvement in Afghanistan starts from late 1970s onwards. US used to come and go out of that country several times. In the first phase, US was actually coordinating the anti-Soviet jihad. When Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan, he was also actually taken a back seat, in the sense that Afghanistan was left in the hands of warlords and neighboring countries. Iran played a major role in the instability of Afghanistan, and Pakistan also played a major role in the instability of Afghanistan at that point of time. By mid-90s, you have Taliban coming in. Once Taliban came in and they started supporting anti-American jihadi groups, then the United States became very active in Afghanistan. And 9/11 and what happened after that, everybody's knowledge. In the context of Pakistan, the US pursued a very complex pattern of relationship. The US wanted a proactive role of Pakistan in countering terrorism. It was not forthcoming from Pakistan. On the contrary, Pakistan's complaint was that her efforts in countering terrorism are not adequately appreciated by the US. The US relations with Pakistan is also a very complex one. From the very beginning, US invested heavily in Pakistan in terms of politics and strategy, because the importance of the strategic location of Pakistan became very significant for the United States, because it's closest to China, it's closest to Soviet Union, it's closest to the oil-producing countries, West Asian countries. So it occupied an important strategic location. So Pakistan was very much there in the American strategic calculation vis-a-vis Middle East as well as Asian region. When we come to the emerging close strategic partnership between US and India, one can see the visible closeness became evident almost 2 years after the India's nuclear test in 1998, the Pokhran II. It had strengthened under the administration of George Bush and resulted in the Indo-US nuclear deal. The successive administrations After that, did not alter the course of the India-US relations, and on the contrary, the relationship has deepened. The US accepted and welcomed Indian involvement in Afghanistan. Also, the US understood India's work in countering China in Asia and the Indo-Pacific region. This realization became evident in the evolution of the Quadrilateral Alliance, or Quad, which include the US, Japan, Australia, and India. The bonhomie between India and the United States developed after the Pokhran II nuclear explosion. US understood that you have to accept India as a nuclear power. There is no way out. Initially, they had put sanctions and all that, but of late they realized that this is the only way to accommodate India in the nuclear club on the one hand, and use India in her future conflict with China. So that was a master move from the part of the United States to start a sort of closeness, which actually resulted in a kind of strategic partnership, after 10 to 15 years. This means that the context for the consolidation of the solid India-US relationship was prepared even before Donald Trump became the president of the US in 2016. Under President Trump, one can see only a continuation of the US policy towards South Asia as existed till then. President Trump's policy of America First, which means the unilateral withdrawal of the US from their involvement in international politics, it did not affect South Asia. Many people think that, Trump's presidency became a major, incident or watermark in the history of contemporary American presidencies with regard to South Asia. Frankly speaking, if you look at American policy for the last 20 years, you can see that United States kept its relationship with Pakistan. At the same time, United States increased its relationship with India. So that policy has not changed. That one can observe a sort of consistency in that policy. So this was there under George Bush. This was there under Barack Obama. It is still actually continuing under President Trump. So you cannot see a major change that has happened under President Trump with regard to US policy towards South Asia. You can see America First slogan of President Trump might have affected some other regions. American withdrawal from Europe and other areas. Africa, the United States may not be that interested. This must have happened. But with regard to South Asia, it has not affected in that sense, because American policy more or less continued the same way as it is. The tendency to withdraw from international politics has started during the presidency of Obama. President Trump only accentuated it. This policy resulted in the debates regarding the decline of the power of US and the rise of China in the contemporary international scenario. President Trump ended the ambiguity in the US policy towards China. That is one important thing which President Trump did. Before that, there was a sort of, ambiguity in US policy towards China, that there was some kind of, veiled threat coming from the United States, and China responds to that. There was a clear idea that there is a trade war going on between the United States and China. But United States never declared China as an open enemy in that sense. You have clash of civilization and all that. Those theoretical frameworks were available, but state policy was not like that. So under Trump, it has undergone some sort of a change. Under President Trump, China is placed as a clear enemy of the values and interests of the US. Once China is declared in many ways as a major threat to American interests, the support of India became crucial for the US in confronting China in the Indo-Pacific region. So why American relationship with India increased? It is because of China's relative rise in the international politics and her assertiveness in international politics, and American perception about China that it is going to be a major threat to American values and interests. That is why America started approaching India from a different standpoint. For the new United States president, one of the important tasks in South Asia would be the implementation of the Afghan peace agreement. This agreement has to be implemented by both the US and the Taliban on the ground. The role of countries like Pakistan in successfully implementing the Afghan peace process on the ground would be very significant. For all practical purposes, managing the Afghan peace process would be a major task for the next US president. In South Asia, one of the important, political tasks the next US president has to carry out is the implementation of Afghan peace process. It is not very simple. In making an agreement, concluding an agreement with Taliban was relatively easy. Implementing such a kind of, agreement on the ground is going to be a major problem. How to deal with the present, regime, the social forces which are supporting the present regime is a major issue. How to deal with Pakistan, how Pakistan is going to behave in the implementation of Afghan peace deal is very important. So this is a major task with regard to South Asia for the next US president, whether it is Trump or Joe Biden. With regard to Pakistan, the Trump administration behaved in an ambiguous manner. Initially, President Trump became very critical of Pakistan. But of late, he softened his stand towards Pakistan. His repeated statements, rather tweets, regarding his keenness to act as a mediator in resolving the Kashmir issue is a clear example of that. Though those tweets by President Trump irked India, nothing much happened beyond that. This became a clear indication that the US does not want to waste their political and strategic investments in Pakistan. You must be remembering when Trump came to power, Trump was very sharp on Pakistan. He was very critical of Pakistan. But of late, he realized that Pakistan is very essential in exiting from Afghanistan. Without Pakistan's help, you cannot arrive at an agreement, a sort of peace agreement with Taliban. If you want to manage Taliban, you have to manage Pakistan also. So how to get closer to Pakistan? So he used his Twitter, messages. He is one president who conducted foreign policy pronouncements to Twitter. So he, in the dead of the night, started, making very interesting tweets regarding, his interest in resolving Kashmir issue, and both Pakistan as well as India requested him to intervene to resolve Kashmir issue and things like that. So later India denied that, but then he created a sort of confusion for some time at that point of time, which was actually meant to pacify Pakistan. So he achieved in that. So at the same time, he realized that Pakistan's importance is very significant as far as America's position in Afghanistan is concerned. So Pakistan has to be taken on board. That is one. Second thing is that what is the point in wasting United States investment in terms of politics and strategy in Pakistan for almost 70 years? From 1950s onwards, you can see United States has been consistently nurturing Pakistan military, dealing with Pakistan military and different social sections in Pakistan. So why to waste that? That is one important thing which Trump learned much later. As far as the smaller countries in South Asia, except Bhutan, is concerned, a proactive engagement of the US in this region is going to upset their cordial relations with China. The Chinese influence on Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Myanmar are well known. The current dispensation in Maldives is keeping a careful distance from China. However, the Chinese lobby and interests are very strong in Maldives. Recently, the US concluded a defense security framework agreement with Maldives and announced that her embassy will be established in Maldives and a resident ambassador will be appointed. This is a major step in countering the Chinese influence in the country and the larger Indian Ocean region. As you all know, for quite some time, Maldives was under Chinese influence. This is that the previous government, led by Abdullah Yasmin, basically was a puppet of Chinese government for many, because China understood the strategic importance of Maldives in terms of Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific region. So China openly supported the autocratic forces within Maldives. The struggle of Maldivian Democratic Party to have democracy within the country was strongly opposed by the Chinese agents as well as the autocratic forces within the country. But somehow, Maldivian Democratic Party managed to come back again. And now, under the present dispensation, which is controlled by Maldivian Democratic Party, Maldives decided to distance from China and get closer to India and United States. So, in the recently concluded, visit of Mike Pompeo, you can see Maldives has uh, signed an agreement. That agreement was signed a little before, but the position right now is that United States, though their diplomatic relations started way back in 1966, there was no embassy. The Sri Lankan American embassy in Sri Lanka was basically carrying out their such kind of responsibilities in Maldives. Right now, United States has decided to establish an embassy and appoint a resident ambassador there. This is a major step with regard to U.S. policy towards in that region, in the sense that Maldives, taking a small country like Maldives very seriously, considering its strategic location, is going to affect U.S. policy towards the region in a very big way. The U.S. State Secretary Pompeo, in his recent visit to Sri Lanka, similarly has openly criticized China for promoting debt trap diplomacy and lawlessness in the region. He has even complained that China won't respect the territorial integrity of small countries. He also exhorted all like-minded countries in the region to come together to counter Chinese influence in the region. It may not be having much influence on the Lankan policy planners, but seen as a major attempt on the part of the US to engage with small countries in South Asia. India is worried about the closeness between China and Bangladesh. India has been pressurizing the US to engage with Bangladesh so that Bangladesh can be weaned away from the influence of China. The emerging differences between India and Nepal due to border dispute and the suspicions of Nepal towards India has pushed Nepal to have developed very close relations with China. It would be difficult for India to accept a traditional influence on Nepal at this juncture. You must be knowing for the last 6-7 months, you are hearing a sort of border dispute developing between India and Nepal. The border issue was there, but it was a very dormant one. But in the context of Chinese support, Nepal has taken it up again. And Nepal has gone a step ahead, an adventurous step rather, to claim some of the Indian territory for Nepal. So now the situation is that Nepali nationalism, in the present administration under the leadership of KP Sharma Oli, it defines Nepali nationalism in opposition to Indian nationalism, or whatever Indian influence or Indian dominance or Indian hegemony in South Asia. So in that sense, you can see Nepal is completely moved away from India at the moment. There are efforts on the part of that government to balance Nepal's policy between China and India. It's almost clear that Nepal is firmly with China at this point. So far, Bhutan is the closest ally of India in this region. However, a Chinese lobby is very much active in Bhutan. China is trying to create their own constituency in Bhutan as Bhutan evolved into a constitutional monarchy having multi-party democracy. As I mentioned earlier, the US-China geopolitical tension is definitely to broaden and deepen regardless of who wins in the current presidential election. How the next administration in the US deals with China will have deep implications for South Asian geopolitics. I fear South Asia and Indo-Pacific is going to be major battlegrounds in the emerging US-China conflict scenario. The broader conflict between China and India, which is getting reflected in the border conflict, is a clear indication of that. One can even see the Doklam crisis that happened in 2017, also a reflection of China's perception about the developing closeness between India and the US, and India's enthusiastic involvement and participation in the Quad. The India-US relations developed from the beginning of this century rest on the following 4 factors. 1, shared values of democracy. 2, the centrality of India in the defense of Indo-Pacific region. 3rd, vibrant trade relationship between India and the US. And 4th, the very influential Indian diaspora in the US. You must be knowing, some of the foreign policy theorists commentators on foreign policy in India, like Raja Mohan and others, they were very forcefully arguing for India's closeness to the United States. They were saying that the Cold War period, India, India pursued a policy of aligning with Soviet Union. That was a mistake. India should not have followed that, because Indian values, India's democratic values, Indian polity's democratic nature, which only goes along with that of United States, the democratic structure of United States and the values of United States. The oldest democracy and the biggest democracy. That was basically the kind of formula they have developed. And they started saying that India is the only country in the Asia-Pacific region where enlightened values are still intact. India is the only country where in the post-colonial phase, democracy has actually flourished. So India and the US are very natural allies. That is the position which they put forth. So this basic position that shared values of democracy, India and United States are linked with shared values of democracy coming from that kind of position. So you can see a host of foreign policy experts, both in United States and India, started arguing for that. So this mainly happened after the collapse of Soviet Union, and that chaotic situation prevailed after that. The very good articulation of that one can see in Raja Mohan's work, Crossing the Rubicon. The second aspect is the centrality of India in the defense of Indo-Pacific. This many of the US strategists understood that in the emerging strategic situation, India's position is very significant in the defense of Indo-Pacific. India is the only country which US can rely on in terms of capability and nature. India is the only country which US can rely on in protecting the Indo-Pacific region. And the trade relations, of course, is there. It is increasing, but US is not India's biggest trading partner. But anyway, it is in the upswing. The very influential Indian diaspora also plays a very important role. You must be very much aware that the Indian diaspora, a very influential Indian diaspora, played a major role in actually crafting the Indo-US nuclear deal. They played a major role in somehow managing that, because there was strong opposition within India. The political parties, left political parties, independent political groups, they all opposed India's nuclear deal with the United States. They say that it is basically a deviation from India's tradition, India's foreign policy, tradition, which is basically anchored around anti-colonial nationalism, which is basically distancing from that legacy. But even then, Manmohan Singh and Bush could actually conclude that treaty with the help of the very influential Indian diaspora in the US. The recently concluded BECA agreement, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement between India and the US, in the 2+2 ministerial dialogue will result in the closer interactions between the militaries of the US and India. The BECA is a major step forward in making India closer ally of the US. India has been already accorded the status of a major strategic partner of the US by the Trump administration. The recently concluded agreement, BECA agreement, this is one of the four fundamental, foundational agreements between India and US. This agreement has actually created a space where Indian as well as US military can come together and even jointly plan operations. This is very significant in the context of the emerging strategic realities in the Indo-Pacific region. Right now, India is in a very peculiar situation. India is a strategic partner of the US, and China is India's biggest trading partner. This is also getting complicated by India's dependence on Russia on defense equipments and spare parts. It's a very peculiar situation because we are now getting closer to United States. It's very clear because of BECA. Now it is almost clear to the entire world that Indian and United States militaries can come together for a joint operation and things like that. It is almost clear. And our biggest trading partner is China, and our biggest trading partner is going to be the biggest enemy of United States. And we are having a heavy dependence on Russia for our defense purchases and spare parts. And Russia is also not having a very good equation with United States. So you are actually in a very, very difficult situation, frankly speaking. Uh, India's neighbors are in good relations with China, except Bhutan and Maldives. The all-weather relationship between Pakistan and China is deepening day by day. Countries in India's extended neighborhood, like Iran, are also getting closer to China. Russia is also getting closer to Pakistan and China. So we are in a very peculiar situation. So our neighborhood, majority of the countries, the smaller countries in our neighborhood are closer to China. Chinese investments are there, in those countries. They cannot just get out of Chinese influence very easily. And extended neighborhood countries like Iran, which is a traditional friend, right now they are basically getting closer to China because we were not in support of Iran on crucial issues. That is why Iran is getting closer to China. So very, very peculiar situation. So you have not so good relations with your neighborhood on the one hand, and you don't have your traditional friends at your side like Russia and Iran. And you have your enemies, Pakistan on the one hand and China on the other side. They're getting more closer because of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. I know some people would even go to the imagination of saying that China and Pakistan are getting very, very closer, and so that Pakistan can be considered as one of the province of China. That is the kind of situation developing between the all other friendship between China and Pakistan. India's developing closeness is mainly good for the larger American strategic interest in Asia and Indo-Pacific region. But will it serve India's or larger South Asian interest is the most important question. To my mind, the developing closeness, they have accorded one of the greatest strategic partnership to us, to India. This is not very suitable for India. This is not good for India. This is actually good for the larger American strategic interest in the region. And this is going to create some sort of problems for India in our neighborhood and extended neighborhood. And it is also not going to help India to take up the natural leadership of South Asian region also. India's hegemony, many people complain about that, but it's a fact. India's hegemony is actually getting questioned even from the smaller neighbors at this point because of this. By taking part in the American security architecture for Asia and Indo-Pacific would definitely result in shrinking of India's maneuvering space in diplomacy in her immediate neighborhood and the larger world. The strategic autonomy, which India maintained even during the Cold War period, will get obliterated completely due to India's closeness to the US and her participation in the formations like Quad. We always wanted to keep our strategic autonomy. India always tried to mark itself as a middle power. All middle powers want to retain their strategic autonomy. Even Indian bourgeoisie, according to some Marxist theoreticians who look at foreign policy analysis in India, they used to look at this way. They also want to say that Indian bourgeoisie, which is not like the bourgeoisie in Pakistan or bourgeoisie in other countries in this India's neighborhood, it's a capable bourgeoisie. This particular bourgeoisie wants to have its independent foreign policy. So strategic autonomy is basically, even non-alignment is basically viewed from that point of view. By the left theoreticians, even non-alignment is viewed from that point of view. Strategic autonomy is a basic tenet of non-alignment. So strategic autonomy is very, very significant for a middle power like India. So now, when we claim that we are entering into the high table and we are going to be a major power, we are losing our strategic autonomy. That is a very, very peculiar situation. It is important to note that among the Quad countries, only India is sharing a long and contested border with China. China's displeasure with regard to Quad and other security initiatives of the US in the region will directly affect India. What is happening in the intra-India-China border is, to my mind, is a reflection of that. So India's participation in Quad, China thinks that these four countries, United States, India, Japan, and Australia, they are basically ganging up against China. Quad is nothing but a ganging up against China. So Japan and Australia are a little distant from China. United States is far away from China. So these three countries, they don't share a border with China. India is the only country which is sharing a long contested border with India. So it is easy for China to have a sort of confrontation with India on its border. So that is exactly happening in the contested border between India and China at the moment. My feeling is that India's enthusiastic participation in Quad is creating a problem for China that is getting reflected in our border. In the present skirmishes that are happening in the India-China border, the US or any other allies of the US are not forthcoming for any kind of initiatives or negotiations between the belligerent parties. This proves that closeness to the American security architecture for the Indo-Pacific region is becoming very costly for India. The deep penetration of China in the economic domain of India's neighborhood is a fact. At the moment and in the near future, India will not be in a position to alter that. The evolving strategic relationship between India and US will only make it more precarious. India's small neighbors like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they are all aware that India is a formidable power in South Asia. But they know that China is even more formidable. And China is willing to invest more in their countries. And they will complete projects in a time-bound manner also. This is experience of Nepal, this is the experience of Sri Lanka and all. There is other factors like data diplomacy and things like that is there. But on the ground, projects are completed in time and things like that. There is no red tape in dealing with China. There is not much bureaucratic hassles in dealing with China. And they are all aware that India will not be in a position to deal with the way China is dealing with them. So China's influence in our neighborhood among the smaller countries is going to be is very serious, and India will not be in a position to contest that in the near future. And it is going to make a major problem for India's dominance in South Asia. Also, it must be noted that India's closest to the US will automatically result in India's alienation from countries like Iran and Russia. It will be completely counterproductive in the long run. The evolving American policy towards South Asia will definitely create a wedge between India and her neighbors. The anti-China posture of India will definitely alienate countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh from India. Among the smaller countries, only Bhutan and Maldives would side with India. Due to political transition, Afghanistan will not be able to take a clear stand. This would only result in the hardening of her anti-India posture by Pakistan. This would only help Pakistan. In the South Asian region, Pakistan will be the beneficiary of this particular kind of position. The emerging closeness between India and US is going to cost a lot for India in this way. The best course for India is to retain, to my mind, its strategic autonomy and engage with China in bilateral and multilateral frameworks. The strong trade relations between India and China will help us to deal with China bilaterally, and the platforms of BRICS and SCO will help India to deal with China multilaterally. We must remember that geography cannot be altered. Hence, we must fine-tune our diplomatic tools to deal with smaller and bigger countries in our neighborhood. In the name of shared values, India must not engage in a conflictual relationship with her neighbors and wage wars for others. Because this is a very very sweet word from American thinkers, strategic thinkers, that we share common values, but we should not fight the wars for the United States. That we have to take into consideration. And we cannot alter geography also. We have to live with our small neighbors in South Asia, and we have to live with China as our neighbor, an important power like China as our neighbor. So we cannot just escape from that. Whoever wins in the 2020 presidential election, the US policy towards South Asia will be more or less similar. As I mentioned earlier, the conflictual relationship between China and the US would shape American policy towards South Asia. South Asian countries, especially India, must keep this in mind and deal with it accordingly to augment their national interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Hello?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
It was. Hello?
I'm really
Hello.
sorry. I'm Santra PS. I was supposed to do the comparing. I'm sorry to interfere.
Okay, take over, take over.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
take over, take over. You could enter now. Okay, fine.
uh,
Take over,
so
take over.
so I would like to continue with that.
No, my lecture is over. So now it is time for you people
Yeah.
to have their observations and comments on the one hand and questions on the other.
So if anyone have any doubts, you may please unmute
Sandra,
and
you
ask.
can invite.
Mathew sir, good morning. Sir, Ashok, CMS College.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, I have a question. I have one question and one observation. The thing is that you said about US policy in South Asia. So my question is that presently, especially after the Abbottabad incident of the killing of the Bin Laden, do you think that the US policy towards India, when it comes to the US policy towards India and Pakistan, is it more or less balanced, or is it towards more tilting towards India or tilting towards Pakistan? So that is the first question. And with regarding to my observation, in the concluding part, you said that with regarding to China, you should engage them bilaterally, having more increased trade, etc. Since if we look in the past 10 years, China has been the biggest trade partner with India. We have been engaging with them multilaterally in many forums, but still, do you think that they are giving us the same respect which we give them, in the sense that they are blocking our entry into the NSG, the Maulana Masood issue in the United Nations General, the sanctions on the terror list, and on many issues, they are not equally reciprocating what we have given to them. So that is my observation. Your comments on that, please.
Yes. I start with your observation. You're absolutely right. We are not getting the kind of treatment we are supposed to get from China, which is true. But what is the way out? If we go closer to United States, United States is not a very dependable ally. You know the history of U.S. Relations with India. In 1962 also, they were not forthcoming to help India at that point of time. There were some other issues at that time. That is, the other factor. But my point is that getting closer to United States will only create the ill feeling of China towards India more prominent. We have to sharpen our diplomatic tools, and then we must keep on engaging with China. That is the only way out. Multilaterally, bilaterally, and even otherwise. We are not using our skills and soft power to deal with China. That is also one important thing. So the classic example is, do we know China very clearly? How many Chinese study centers are there in India? Is the most important country bordering our country. One. The second thing is that we are two old civilizations. That kind of interactions are not happening. So unless and until that sort of interactions develop, how do we engage with the country of that size and potential on the one hand, and we are still completely Chinese grand strategy, strategy culture. We are only having the literature available free, created by the Americans and the Western scholars. We are not engaging in any sort of independent study or observation of Chinese mindset and things like that. That this is a major issue, which we have to seriously think about with regard to that. Regarding your question, yes, United States understands Pakistan's worth. They know that Pakistan, because of the location, Pakistan is very, very significant because its closeness to Afghanistan, Central Asia, China, and Pakistan's relations to China also very, very important. So Pakistan is for use value at the moment for United States. For them, India is much more important because in the larger Indo-Pacific strategic theater, India will be more useful to United States than Pakistan because China is in close relations with Pakistan, and Pakistan may not be dependable when United States deal with China. So United States is very much clear about their relationship with Pakistan. It is basically use value at the moment.
Ashok, your microphone is muted.
Sir, you're saying that US is more tilting towards India than Pakistan.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No, there are many questions in the chat box. I request you to please ask him directly the questions. Shelly, Johnny, and Bensila B, you may ask directly to him now. Or would you want me to ask him your questions? Bensila B?
Yeah, read out Bensilad's question. You can read out Bensilad's question.
Okay. So Bensila B was having this question. Recently, the French President Emmanuel Macron's words on Islam is very serious among nations. If a religious or an ethnic war occurs, surely China will Pakistan in all sense. Then what will India do? This was the question.
With regard to the incident that happened in France, India has officially come out with a statement. But one has to problematize what is happening in France. That is also my point. That incident. If you just see the incident and react to that, it is not clearly giving an idea of what the level of Islamophobia which is there in Europe, especially in France. This incident is basically camouflaging the Islamophobia there. That is also an important thing. Why, extremist segments of Muslims are reacting this way? That is also an important question to be asked. That kind of a problematization with regard to these kind of issues never happened in our informed debate. That is why there is a binary exists between. It's very easy to blame section for taking up arms and things like that. We don't get into the issue very seriously. I think it needs more probing and a serious assessment of the situation. And it's very clear, China definitely will be supporting Pakistan. But what is happening to Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang is also an important question to be asked. China cannot also completely get away from this problem, in the sense that they are right now attacking their cultural practices, their religious practices of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. These are reports are coming. No, in that sense, China is also practicing what France is doing. For political purposes, for strategic purposes, they might be with Pakistan. They might be supporting Pakistan's position. But within their own territory, they are taking a completely different position. So I think one has to seriously look into the issue from a different standpoint. We must probe seriously into that and problematize that issue. Then we cannot completely obliterate the fact that Islamophobia is there in very big way in our contemporary debates, as well as especially in the context of Europe, it is very much there.
Okay, was that clear, Bensila B? Okay, so we shall move to the next question from Shelly Johnny. She says that she would like to thank Sir for a very engaging presentation. And the question is this: will a US military withdrawal from Afghanistan give greater space for the US to put pressure on Pakistan in the future with regard to ensuring stability in Afghanistan?
At the moment, the implementation of peace agreement would be a major issue for United States. For that, they need Pakistan. My feeling is that even after that, even after the withdrawal and implementation of the peace process also, they cannot completely exert that kind of pressure on Pakistan, because Pakistan will be very necessary for them, because they don't have that kind of cordial relationship with Iran. Iran also can create problems in Afghanistan. So keeping that in mind, they cannot at the moment antagonize Pakistan. So they will not be in a position to put more pressure on Pakistan only because they are withdrawing from Afghanistan. That's my understanding of the situation.
Okay, is that clear? Anyone have any other doubts or queries? You may ask. Anyone? So can we move on? I guess.
Myself, I have a small comment and a query. In the comment in the sense that the overall transformation which has been discussed in terms of the declining superpower, the dimension of another pole in that sense, seems to be actually influencing the whole South Asia as a region when thinking about the smaller powers. We knew that the India's foreign policy in its interaction with its neighborhood seems to be having that element of what you say, the reciprocity, demanding reciprocity, which actually in very shorter period only thought about, like the Gujarat Doctrine, and that's the period when non-reciprocity as an element came into the Indian foreign policy. So the dominance of India in the region, whether it is during the ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka or the 1950, the Indo-Nepal border agreement, Bhutan as a landlocked country, then liberation of Bangladesh war, continuous influence of a political leadership, more than 30 years of a rule in Maldives, supported by an Indian government. In the neighborhood, it seems to be the Indian dominance that seems to be creating a fear factor. In that way cannot be incorporate that sort of a small country's fear, whether it is in trade and transit treaties. Nepal constantly demanding that India provide another port at Vizag, access to the Visakhapatnam port, which India could not give in the last 50 years or so. So is the Chinese influence true that this geopolitical major on is actually created by Indian work? So will that sort of an inward-looking process will ever happen in India in the foreign policy discussions? That is what one thing I was thinking. And the question is related to the, let's say, on your point that Democrats and the Republicans may not be having not much difference or approach towards South Asia. The basic framework will be the same thing. What I was thinking is that when we are thinking about containing an engagement, the Obama administration seems to be think in terms of larger, the liberal international relations framework, where institutionalism, multilateralism, and engaging with those who are actually drifting apart. So even the Iran nuclear treaty was a major breakthrough in the West Asian region geostrategically, which actually the Republicans or the previous Democrat regime seems to be actually thinking that it would be a very hot topic to handle with. But there is agreement happening with Iran. So even if there is a right wing in Europe, the mainstream, the German or the French, the conservatives do have a role. But that liberal institutionalism, element of that liberal institutions still prevail in the European region, in the major European powers. So towards that element and looking at, can Democrats in that sense rework on the nature in which, let's say, the element of liberal institutionalism can influence the South Asian region as well. So in that sense, there could be a break from the past. Can you comment on that aspect?
With regard to the second, part of your question, in the sense that liberal institutionalism will work in the context of if Democrats come to power, definitely they will soften their stance towards China. But but the position will be the same. I don't think it is going to make any serious change. They will be using other platforms. They will be using various platforms available, which Trump was not interested in. But in the case of a Democratic Party's leadership, if Joe Biden comes to power, definitely they'll be using that. There will be an attempt on the part of American establishment to mobilize other countries against China using diplomacy. That would be a major a factor or change one can expect in democratic administration if it comes to power. Otherwise, I don't think their position, that American deep state, he has taken a position with regard to China. That is there. That is not going to change. I think that is harder, because you're talking about the Obama's period. That is 4 years before. So now I think it is almost clear that the confrontation has to happen in some form or the other, because China also hardened its position. So that bipartisan consensus almost is there. Maybe modality is different, but deep state position with regard to China and identifying China as a primary enemy is still there. That is very clear. With regard to India, yes, India's hegemony, that was a major problem for all other countries. Earlier, it was for Pakistan. Pakistan is known as a non-status quo power in the region, because it wants to undermine status quo. So it was not able to do it because its capabilities are not like that, not up to that mark. So that's why it was not able to do it. But in the case of other countries, they were not able to do anything. They were not, getting any sort of outside support to balance India. That was the position at that point of time. In the case of Pakistan, Pakistan was using United States and the first, phase to counter India, and then later on China. China was also not forthcoming for the small nations to balance with India. So of late, you can see in the last 10 years, China has actually changed its policy in the entire region. That is why we are talking about string of pearls and all that. Because of that, we also got a feeling that we are encircled by China. Whether it is happening or not, that's a different question altogether. My point is that China also changed its position to help smaller countries to somehow balance their. Nepal is now becoming very assertive because of China's support. Without China's support, how can Nepal be assertive? Nepal cannot be assertive. Bangladesh is taking a under the Hasina, it's taking a position which is not completely opposed to India, but at the same time they are also very clear that China is there. So if India is taking a very hegemonic position, hegemonic posture in the region, they can depend on some outside force, which is much more dependable than United States. Sri Lanka is very clear. Sri Lanka, Chinese presence in Sri Lanka is almost clear. Under Rajpaksa family, China is deeply entrenched into Sri Lanka. So it is not easy, even though Mike Pompeo made a statement in front of Godbay Rajpaksa that China is one country which one cannot depend on. It is not going to make a major difference in Sri Lankan policy towards China, because their investment is so much, and China helped Sri Lanka to somehow manage their ethnic war with Tamil militants. So I don't think at this point we will not be in a position to exert our traditional influence on our smaller neighbors. Our hegemony is very seriously questioned. We may be considering that we are hegemon inside. We are not hegemon outside. We are not in a position to do that. And moreover, interestingly, earlier the situation was that India and Soviet Union and United States, Pakistan and China, that was the equation. Now the situation is completely reversed. China and Pakistan, China, Pakistan and Russia together, India and United States on the other hand. It's basically a change happened in that manner. United States is there both sides. Earlier it was with Pakistan and China, now it is with India only. So that is, and Russia. Russia, on the other hand, was with India earlier. Now Russia with Pakistan and China. That is the situation. So it's very interesting. If you look at the history of big power involvement in South Asia for the last 50 years, you can see this change taking place.
Okay. There's another question from
Santra.
So
Shelly Johnny
if
want to.
students want to ask questions
Shelly
in
Johnny.
Malayalam, no problem. Ask questions in Malayalam. I will also answer in Malayalam. No issues.
okay.
Because some of them
Okay.
may be having that problem, so that's why I'm saying this.
Yeah. Okay. So
Shelley,
Shelly Johnny had already asked a question.
yes.
So I will say that. Um,
He want to ask one more.
has the entry of the Islamic
please let him.
State in Afghanistan and Pakistan linked the conflicts in West Asia and South Asia, justifying the US definition of the Greater Middle East region?
The involvement of Islamic State in Afghanistan is basically part of that, larger Islamic, framework of some of the organizations which are functioning in that extremist fringe. I don't think it may be having that kind of an impact in Afghanistan. They may be able to stage one or two attacks and things like that, but they don't have that kind of influence within the Afghan society. Especially the Uzbek and the Tajik regions, they may not be having that because they have their traditional, the old Northern Alliance. Those forces are still active. They are there. And in this side, Pashtun side, you have Taliban. So I don't think IS will be able to replace Taliban. They will be there. They will be. There are reports that they are even present in India, but they may be a presence only. They may not be. They may be able to do something, some kind of terrorist attack or something like that. Beyond that, I don't think they'll get support from the public. Both in Pakistan and Afghanistan, I don't think they'll be able to get that kind of support from them. And Greater Middle East also, how it is going to materialize. This idea of Greater Middle East is also. I think I think it's very doubtful to my mind.
Okay. So there's another question from Bhagishree Menon. She was asking, sir, can you predict who will in the election going to happen? If so, why?
I am not able to predict who is going to win in the election because some people today's report saying that Biden is able to establish his dominance of his dominance in the swing states. If that happens, Biden will win. But we should keep our fingers crossed. We don't know exactly how Americans think. We never thought that Trump would win in the last election. So I think we have to be, and moreover, all over the world, rightists are on the upswing. So we should not underestimate Trump on the basis of the news reports. Unless and until this happens, once the results are out, I am not able to predict at the moment who is going to win the election.
Okay, sir. So anyone else have any questions to ask?
Hello, I have a question.
Yes, why not?
Can I ask in mic? Okay. Sir, Turkey under the authoritarian regime of Recep Tayyip Erdogan is aspiring to lead a non-Arab Islamic states alliance with Pakistan, Malaysia, and Pakistan and Turkey has increased their trade and cultural relations. But Joe Biden has pointed out in an election campaign that he will dethrone Erdogan regime not by force but through democratic means. And earlier, the Fethullah Gulen's defeated attempt to coup the Erdogan regime and his political asylum in America has also created a tension stifled among Turkey and United States of America. Now the alliance being formed between Turkey and Pakistan, will it affect the stifled relationship between Turkey and America? Will it affect the alliance between USA and Pakistan, and how will it affect the South Asia in total?
Turkey, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, they are basically in some sort of a conflict to get the leadership of the Islamic faith. That is exactly happening right now. Interestingly, earlier Pakistan used to go with Saudi Arabia on many of the occasions. Now you are saying that no, Pakistan is getting closer to Turkey because Turkey is taking positions which Pakistan wants. For example, on Kashmir, Turkey's position is completely supporting that of Pakistan. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, under this government in India, we have made some interesting overtures towards Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is not taking positions which are apparently closer to that of Pakistan. On Kashmir, they are taking a position which is not that identical with that of Pakistan. And on terrorism, they are taking a position which is very much, useful for India. So you can see that change happening, that turning process happening in the Islamic world. Only problem is that of Iran. Iran was a traditional friend of India, but under American pressure, we have actually not supported Iran on certain important, aspects of their international engagements. That actually created a problem. So Iran is now getting away from us, and Iran is getting closer to China. Iran is getting closer to, Russia also. So you'll find that is happening. But that also will be having its implications in our domestic politics. And the Turkey Saudi conflict also will be having its implication in our domestic politics, because the Islamic politics within India also it is going to get reflected. And definitely, though Joe Biden is saying that no, he will, there will be a regime change in Turkey and all that, it is not that easy, because that party, Erdogan's party, is able to retain power for quite some time. I don't know how Biden, with the help of that Gulen's movement and all that, they might be planning like that, but it is not that easy. It is easy to say that, but it will not be, that easy to implement on the ground. So Turkey is going to, to emerge as a major spokesperson of a particular section of position within the Islamic world that we have to observe in the near future. And the countries like Pakistan will be going with Turkey because it is convenient for them to, follow that position.
Yes.
Okay. So Rahul PCK Lavama raises another question. He asks, do you think that there are any relevance of the argument by Donald Trump that there will be a chance for manipulation happens on this election, mainly in the postal ballots? What do you think?
No, Trump can say whatever he wants to say, because there were very clear allegations about certain sections within the country about his victory also. So he might say anything but I think that is a clear indication that he is not very clear about the prospect of his victory. That is why he is already taking advance, a bail in advance. But I don't think at the moment this might happen. A sizable section of the US basically they don't want Trump to come back as president of the United States. So that may be getting reflected in these kind of statements. But I don't know what exactly the final outcome of the election at the moment.
Okay, so any other questions? Anyone? Okay, so I think the questions are over.
Dawson?
Yes, sir?
Is Dawson online?
Hello?
Dawson from Maharajas College? Hello? Okay, fine. Oh,
okay. So I think
Sandra,
we can end the session,
you can
Q&A
continue.
session. Okay. Thank you so much, Matthew. That was a great session, and I also beg your pardon that there were, many technical issues, and thank you for putting up with that. Thank you so much, sir. And I would like to thank Pramod sir for taking up my part. Thank you, Pramod sir. Okay, I hope you all had a great time. Now let's move to the Thanksgiving session. I invite Babida from third year BA Political Science for the Thanksgiving.
Feeling gratitude and not expressing. It is like wrapping present and not giving it. Respected principal, chairman, chief guest, head of department, teachers, and my dear friends. A very warm good afternoon to one and all. I'm really honored to be asked to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. We have gathered here as a part of national webinar on the topic US Presidential Election 2020 Implication for South Asia conducted by PG and Research Department of Political Science. We all know that we are going through very tough and desperate times, but still among us, pandemic conducting national webinar like this and keeping us engaged and well informed really deserves an appreciation. On this note, let me begin by thanking our respected principal for giving his all-hearted support and encouragement for this venture. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude towards our head of department, PG Department Research of Political Science, Amora, for all his effort in making this webinar a grand success. Now, I sincerely thank our respected chairman, Anand sir, who graced us with his presence and words. Let me extend my deepest appreciation and gratitude towards Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Mathew Joseph sir, for taking time from your busy schedule and for your efforts to make this webinar really and informative through your lecture. Thank you, sir, on the behalf of our all college and department. Now, I would like to thank our beloved teachers for all their support. Last but not least, my deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the participants who choose to be live with us and attend this webinar in great enthusiasm and made it a successful event. And all on this occasion, I would like to address our juniors, the new first year batch who are present here. I hope this webinar have given you an excellent start and I wish you having a smooth and happy journey throughout your college journey. Once again, I thank each one of you present here for making this webinar a resounding success with this. I wind up. Thank you. Have a nice day.
So we are into the ending session. I invite Kannan sir for the official conclusion of the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Kannan, hello? Kannan?
Okay.
Hello?
Okay. First, hello.
Yes, sir. Audible.
It's audible.
Okay, first of all, I would like to say sorry to all of you because of the technical issue in the initial time. And I just wanted to thank to all of you who have attended, and also to our resource person and all other teachers and participants. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all. It was a very interesting session for me, and I'm extremely thankful to Dr. Pramod as well as Kannan and other organizers for the webinar. Thank you all once again.
Thank you, Mathew, for sparing the time. We knew that the online classes at Jamia has been started and also having other academic activities. And we actually look forward for inputs in terms of the academic and intellectual aspects in terms of your works, and expecting future cooperation and future interactions. Thank you, Mathew.
Thank you.
Okay,
so
thank
we are
you,
winding
everyone.
up.
So hereby we conclude our webinar. Thank you. Have a great day all.
The certificate links are for the participants. The certificate link is available in the chat box. So you can, for all those who, all the first years also,